Niccolo Machiavelli was a political philosopher based in Florence, Italy during the Renaissance era. For much of his life, he was a diplomatic and military affairs official for the Florentine Republic. Throughout his life, he wrote many texts on political science, political ethics, and military theory. Although Machiavelli's writing wasn't confined to political science. He also wrote comedies, carnival songs, and poetry, which has led many scholars to believe that his most famous work, The Prince, is a satire. After working for several years as a banker's assistant in Rome, he returned to Florence in time to witness the expulsion of the Medici family, a clan of oligarchic despots, which in base terms means oppressive power-wielding tyrants, who had ruled Florence for decades. Years after witnessing Italy fall to intense political conflict and the Medici family finally returning to power, Machiavelli wrote The Prince and dedicated it to Lorenzo de' Medici, hoping to win his favor and be offered an official position once again. At first, both the public and the Medicis received The Prince quite indifferently. However, as word spread of the book, the public began to criticize it as immoral and evil. The Prince distinguished itself in a big way by separating the concept of politics and ethics. In claiming that the end justifies the means, he managed to deny all classical political theory that believed that political law was linked to a higher moral law. As well as its simplified outlook on politics, The Prince is known for its pared-down vocabulary and straightforward explanations of the concepts it explains. Most philosophers of the era would concoct hypothetical scenarios to explain their theories. Machiavelli grounded his writing in the real-life circumstances he witnessed in Florence. Dedicating it to Lorenzo de' Medici marked The Prince as a practical guide for ruling. In the first chapter of The Prince, Machiavelli distinguishes the difference between a principality and a republic. A principality being a monarch, run by a prince, and a republic being headed by elected officials. Though the book is dedicated primarily at the ruler of a principality, the republic is often referred to as a means of comparison. Another distinction he makes in the first few chapters is the difference between an ecclesiastic principality and a hereditary principality. An ecclesiastic principality is one technically under the rule of a prince, but dominated strongly by the church. A hereditary principality is one that has been controlled by the same family for many generations. In Machiavelli's eyes, these are the easiest principalities to maintain. One of the earliest and most important pieces in The Prince is in Chapter 3, as Machiavelli discusses the choice every prince has between benevolence and destruction while reasoning with an enemy in the following chapter. At this point, one may note that men must either be pampered or annihilated. They avenge light offenses, they cannot avenge severe ones. Hence, the harm one does to a man must be such as to obviate any fear of revenge. From this quote, one can gather that punishing an enemy, no matter how small, runs the risk of causing resentment among people, and that the prince should only act in a severe manner if he is completely sure that there will be no consequences. In other words, making punishment so severe and conclusive that there will be no need to anticipate revenge. Machiavelli asserts that many characteristics are inherent in human nature. He believed, somewhat like Hobbes, who would later note, that people inherently have their own best interest at heart. Though they are capable of having affection for others, their own fear of emotional pain deters them from engaging in meaningful acts. This can be seen in the following quote. Here, a question arises, whether it is better to be loved than feared, or the reverse. The answer is, of course, that it would be best to be both loved and feared. But since the two rarely come together, anyone compelled to choose will find greater security in being feared than in being loved. Love endures a bond which men, being scoundrels, may break whenever it serves their advantage to do so, but fear is supported by the dread of pain, which is ever present. More often than not, Machiavelli's statement that it is better to be feared than loved comes off as tyrannical and heartless. But upon further analysis, many have come to believe that this statement is only a testament to his further beliefs about mankind's emotional frailty and fear of being hurt by others. Though Machiavelli's concepts in The Prince may seem distantly related to the world we now live in, his advice for young rulers echoes on today even in our most basic and low-level power structures. For the purpose of this video, we'll use the example of a high school. The clique will take the place of the court. The members of the clique will take the place of the allies. The lower-ranking students will be the subjects, and the most popular girl in school will be the prince. There will always be some form of social hierarchy in a high school. The most popular girl in school will always be at the top of said hierarchy. To illustrate Machiavelli's point about hereditary governments being stronger than republics, we will take our popular girl and imagine that she has a younger sister. The older sister will begin to slowly integrate her younger sister into her social life, taking her to parties, introducing her to other popular boys and girls. People will begin to grow accustomed to her and her status as the successor to her sister's reign over the high school. By the time her older sister graduates and she takes over, people will have already accepted her as the new most popular girl in school. It will be understood that within her school she will have the most influence upon others. She must use this influence wisely and sparingly in order to maintain the value of her opinion. For example, she may one day choose to compliment another student or a member of her clique. If she does this once, the girl on the receiving end of the compliment will continue to seek her approval and validation, thus respecting that only she can provide one with such affirmations. If she begins to compliment this girl of her own free will and on a regular basis, this commoner, if you will, may begin to see this as a means to advance socially. Or, worse than this, others will see it as a shifting in power. They may start treating this girl with the same respect as the more popular girl that initially complimented her. Understanding that the worst possible scenario that could take place would be for the most popular girl in school to be overthrown, it is of the utmost importance that she maintain her esteem and accept that her positive qualities won't necessarily benefit her position in the school. She must understand that it is more important to be feared and mean to others when necessary than it is to lack authority. If maintaining her power to walk over others is what keeps her from getting walked on, she must exercise this power. As another precaution, she must amass a strong body of allies, or other slightly less popular girls, to help her avoid sabotage from outside forces. There is strength in numbers, and even though the goal is to have enough power to stand alone, she must have backup in case someone else tries to lead a social revolution. A more pressing possibility, however, is that she will be conspired against by her own clique. Although she should primarily rule her clique as she does the rest of the school, she must keep their loyalty by offering other perks or material symbols of their status. To gain renown on a larger scale and to gather more followers, she must reward those who maintain loyal to her and make all others envious by hosting parties and other exclusive social events. If there exists such a balance, she must overall aim to be liked by the general population but equally feared by them. By punishing students who defy her to make an example out of them, she can ensure that there will be no risk of revenge, as any attempt would seem weak in comparison. When all is said and done, one must definitely ask themselves if it's all worth it just to maintain a title. If you were to ask Machiavelli what the point was, perhaps he would assure you that, after all, the end justifies the means. So maybe a better question to ask would be, if the end justifies the means, then what justifies the end? Machiavelli wrote The Prince in an attempt to gain the favor of the prince and hopefully land an advisory position within his government. Well, Machiavelli must have followed his own advice, considering that the prince was only a device meant to advance his own political gain. In a sense, leaving that final question unanswered by not specifying what was justified at the end, but only what justified the means, he did answer the question. The end will always be justified if power is gained.